Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sahitya Academy's Webline Literature series. Today's program is in English language. Today, we have three eminent poets with us to read their poems. Uh, in the last few episodes of those who've been watching, they will know that we talked about the various forms of poetry and why we read poetry and all. But essentially, there was some feedback that people asking questions. Why poetry? What poetry does? Actually, poetry, without poetry, if one has to think, not only psychological word, even our expressions about the objective phenomenal world will be barren. Poetry, it ornaments our thoughts, it beautifies our emotions. So this tradition of reading a poetry and listening to the poetry live from the poet herself or himself is one tradition that has been on the wane for quite some time now. Huffington Post every now and then it does uh, it undertakes uh, polls and surveys and all that. In 2015, they took up subcontinent. In subcontinent, one thing they one of the things in under the field of literature and education was that reading a story or reading a poem has dwindled. They use the word dwindle, completely gone. The tradition is gone. So, in one way, Sahitya Academy is trying to keep up the tradition alive. Essentially, all poetry is a kind of a performance. It's oral by nature. Of course, nowadays people, all of us write because we have technology available with us and we have varieties of poetry available now. Instagram poetries, for example. And recently we heard somebody who got stuck in Canberra during the pandemic. That lady didn't know what to do. She can't come out and she used her WhatsApp to write poetry and it was published in the United States. So technology is helping people to express, help people to express in different ways. But essentially, this tradition of reading poetry is this our current program is a continuation of Sahitya Academy's commitment. So we have three poets with us, and the first poet is Madhu Vendra. Madhu has authored two books of poetry, Make Me Some Love to Eat and Stick No Bills, both published by Red River. He is a founder of Poetry Culture, a movement that has created free spaces for poetry in many cities in India, including Northeast. He uses performance poetry as a tool to advocate human and environmental rights. He, uh, he regularly curates and reads for the American Central Libraries in India. He collaborates with global artists to create cross-disciplinary poetry experiences. His poems have been set to classical music and contemporary dance. His works have been featured in many literary journals. He was a resident artist at Basic Confluence. His poems have been translated into many languages. It's a pleasure to have you with us today, Madhu.
Thank you so much, Rajmohan sir, for the kind introduction. And thanks to the Sahitya Academy for hosting this beautiful webline series of poetry. I have been totally enjoying the other part of the series too, and I'm glad to be a part of it. The first poem I'm reading.
Wait, Madhu. I will introduce others also so
Okay.
that the
Sure.
time is not there. Our second poem is Kirti Sengupta. He's the editor-in-chief of Ethos, Live Literary Journal. He is also a translator and publisher from Calcutta and Delhi. He has been awarded 2018 Rabindranath Tagore Literary Prize for his contribution to literature. Mr. Sengupta has published 11 books of poetry and prose, 2 books in translation, and 7 edited anthologies. His poems have been published in Florida Review Online, The Common, Amethyst Review, Ink Sweet and Tears, Headway Quarterly, and so on. So, welcome to the show, sir, Mr. Kirti Sengupta.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Sahitya Academy, for inviting me for this online poets meet. And I welcome Professor Sharma, Sunil ji, and my beloved Madhu Raghavendra to these poets meet.
Thank you. Most welcome. And the next panel, next poet is Professor Sunil Sharma. He is a Mumbai-based senior academic critic, literary editor, and author of 22 published books. Our 7 collections of these poetry, 3 short fictions, 1 novel, a critical study of the novel, and 9 anthologies on prose, poetry, and criticism, and 1 joint poetry collection. He is a recipient of United Kingdom-based Destiny Poets Inaugural Poet of the Year Award in 2012. His poems were published in the prestigious United Nations project Happiness, the Delight Tree, an anthology of contemporary international poetry in the year 2015. Uh, Sunil edits the English section of monthly bilingual journal Setu, published from Pittsburgh, United States. It's a great to have you with us, Professor Sunil Sharma.
Thank you very much for such a generous introduction, Rajmohan sir. Real pleasure for me to be on this pan-national multilingual platform. You are doing a fantastic job.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll start without any further delay. We'll start. And Madhu, can you read your first poem? Please unmute yourself.
Yeah. Thank you so much once again. The first poem is titled Artist. And as we know, artists were deemed non-essential during this pandemic by a Singapore survey. And that struck a chord with across the world artists. They felt bad about it. And there's something that I had written about it. Artist. I don't mind being the non-essential. Even a child takes its mother for granted. It does not run back to its mother until it is hurt. Nobody first thinks of water when they arrive at an exquisite dinner party until they are choking. I don't mind being the non-essential, knowing you will come looking when things are broken and nothing else works. Art is non-essential until it is not. Thank you.
Mr. Kirti Sengupta, your first poem, please.
Madhu, that was a wonderful poem based on mother and her child. So, on that particular line, my first poem will be Womb. Womb is included in my collection. It's called The Earthen Flute. And the poem starts as, with every earthquake, I realize, with every earthquake, I realize I have failed to express much attention to my mother. She has a right to take me into her again. She has a right to take me into her again. I know she will take enough care as she took before. World, you may comment on material loss. World, you may comment on material loss. Only mother understands her rupture pain. Thank you.
Sunil?
Yes, thank you very much. Responding to two of my poet friends, I would like to read a short poem on James Joyce from my collection Intersections, published last year. It's a literary tribute to James Joyce, the power of words, the power of a genius, in continuation with this dialogue of creativity. Joyce, a very short poem, lines, contours, static, till a magician appears and alters realities, internal, external, geographies, mental, emotional, physical, taxonomies, syntaxes, lexical units within linear arrangements, making them leap outside.
Okay. That's
Thank
good,
you.
sir. Thank you. Thank you. Madhu, unmute yourself, please.
Thank you for keeping me reminding that. This poem is titled Daydreaming, and it is what Rajmohan sir was also discussing, the sales of books. So it has gone up, and hopefully it keeps going better post-pandemic too. So it's about people buying books. So it's a request from the poet, Daydreaming. The beginning of the month, salary has been credited. What's budgeted is budgeted. The groceries, school fees, rent, electricity, house help, Netflix, and cosmetics. Governments are phlebotomists who gently puncture veins, draw taxes, give us a barbed wire country, roads, and rigs. Talk a little about nuclear war and army. Tell us it is for our own safety. Save some contingency for postcards and poets. Write to a stranger, stick a love stamp, and post it. Poets have no countries, veins, and salaries. They wait for your postcards in their daydreams as you buy their books and read their poems in barter. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Kirti.
Yes, Rajmohan sir. My next poem is a prose poem from the collection titled Reflections on Salvation. The poem is titled Krishna. We won't be bound by our actions, good or bad. We are not the doers. So when I'm worshipping the gods, they are in fact worshipping themselves. Why would I let that happen? I would rather worship myself and be happy. My physical frame, words I utter, and my mind, they have one thing in common: I. No matter if someone indulges in an unfair deed, the gods would suffer through us, and thus we would remain unaffected. Did you hear me? You might call me ignorant, but I am neither Krishna nor your beloved political servant. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Professor Sunil.
Well, the title of this short poem is Wrong Place, Time. Like Hamlet, caught in a wrong court age, I stand midway between visible, invisible realms, placed amid the theater players, royal players, searching for real in an unreal setting, not having the capacity of that brooding prince, the most iconic Dane so far, to resist, fight, die for a ghost and a cause. Thank you.
Madhu.
This poem is titled Unnoticed. It's especially in a case of self-doubt, and there's so much of artists starting up, and there's so much of self-doubt in us in a way. So it's just to say that we arrive every day. Yeah. Unnoticed. Only when people think something good, something big has happened to you, they tell you you have arrived. No, you arrive with your first amateur art. You arrive when you curated your first event, put in all your heart and sweat, and only 5 people showed up. You arrived when you spent all your money on your art. You arrived on the nights you cried thinking you were a failure. You arrived when you pulled your fellow artists through anxiety. You arrive every day. No one notices.
In fact, Nietzsche, once he wrote, one of his aphorisms. Well, not exactly aphorism, but he said it is creative minds that are always beset with pernicious self-doubts. So
Yes.
I don't know why poets and teachers and writers they get more of self-doubt than ordinary people. Anyway,
So
so Mr. Kirti,
Yeah, Rajmohan sir, is it doubt or it is self-questioning? So my next poem is based on self-questioning, and
okay.
it's based on a popular American movie called The Notebook, where we have the protagonist Allison Aka Ali. So the poem is titled Troth, Troth, and it begins with an epigraph like, "Do you think that our love can create miracles? Do you think our love could take us away together?" So it was a speech by Alison Hamilton in the movie titled The Notebook. And my poem begins as, "Will my wife cross examine me as Alison did? Will my wife cross examine me as Alison did? She wishes to depart far first. She wishes to depart first. What if her yen is quashed? She guards two pair of bangles, coral and conch. Mrs. ensures they are intact. She fears a chink will curtail my breath." So this is from the latest anthology that I have edited. It's called Shimmer Spring, published by Hawakal Publishers. And I'm happy that Madhu's two poems are included in this collection. Congratulations, Madhu.
Professor Sunil.
My next poem is Lap Comforting. The shirtless vagabond sleeps on the bare earth under a gnarled tree at the corner of a street full of noise and fumes of the restive automobiles. The lips, black parsed, murmuring, "Mother, mother," in his sleep, in a deep sleep denied to the hectic metropolitan citizens. Thank you.
Okay, okay. Madhu. Unmute yourself, please.
Now this is becoming really something every time. Okay, sorry. This poem actually is in a way succinctly, this was written long back, but I thought people realized this during the pandemic. It's called Lesson, and it goes with a epigraph by Nida Fazli. दुनिया जिसे कहते हैं जादू का खिलौना है, मिल जाए तो मिट्टी है, खो जाए तो सोना है. Life in big cities is carcinogenic, inherently xenophobic. Make it big, make it large, be smart, outlive, outrun. When I left Delhi for Agartala, I knew I would find nothing. Nothing big, nothing important, only a person who loves me. At times, that is all you want. Nobody, a gush of wind to rattle your window, a young mango tree to be taken care of, a petty rose shrub to be pruned, afternoon tea to be prepared, curtains to be opened, and wooden table to be painted, a room to be cleaned, books to be shelved, a blanket to be warmed, food to be shared, a poem to be read. At times, that is all life asks for. Thank you.
Mr. Kirti.
Yes, sir. This poem is titled Y Gene. We have like two sets of gene, X gene and Y gene. So this poem is Y Gene. My friends were aware of the wish I nurtured. If I had a daughter, I would name her Sri Vidya. I was not influenced by any actor. Our prayer room hosted a dazzling crystal Sri Yantra on the holy altar. My wife's desires were girly too. She wished to drape her daughter in frilly dresses. She had plans to find her girl a groom in clover so my wife could live comfortably. Prior to her labor, my mother in law keenly observed my wife's navel. Come on, it's a boy. It was a boy, a cute little one of 2.5 kilos. To take care of the borderline weight, special supplements were arranged. My wife looked proudly bright. We worshipped the Narayana right after the holy bath. My son is at school. It is a co education convent. After school, he tells his mother, girls, sit on the left side.
Yeah. Professor Sunil?
The title of my poem is Heroic. Every evening I swim and sink and then resurface, gasping for breath, dying, resurrecting like the ceaseless day night cycle. Clinical, precise, repeating like the Camus discovered Sisyphus in his labors, trying to find hope in a hopeless milieu. It might sound madness for the successful, but that is most heroic example of survival for an ordinary guy. Locating a flower in an arid gulag of mind and space, littered with dead roses. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So that's a good poem. And Madhu?
Yeah, I should have submitted my biodata first, but somehow I kind of missed that. So here I go. The poem is titled Biodata. A Tanjore Maharashtrian born on the Hooghly, calm to my Avva's Kannadiga lullaby, soaked in sambar and rasam served day after day with begun or aloo bhaja. I speak nomadic of my ancestors, Marathi from where they migrated, Tamil from where they settled, Kannada from porous borders, Bengalis from the softness of the Gonga clay, English from the convent where I schooled, reciting Hanuman Chalisa at school's chapel, waking up to MS Subbalakshmi Suprabhatam, finding peace in the wealth of Mehboobe Ilahi, in love with a Galo girl from Arunachal, where the shadows of the clouds rest on mountains and the Yomgo and the Siang rivers fall in love. Who speaks better Telugu than my mother? Sings ghazals like Penaz Masani and loves Ghalib like Purani Dilli ever did. I have no belongings. Poetry is all I'll ever need. Thank you.
Okay. So you're inviting trouble. So your wife speaks better Telugu than your mother. So already start a war at home. Okay. And hope they don't see this. Okay. Mr. Kiriti?
Yes, sir. Madhu, your biodata is quite impressive, I must say. So, my next poem is a bit longer and it is divided into four parts. The poem is titled Observance. Number one, visitors who checked in to see my father post surgery appeared stressed. After his discharge, several came home, eyes moistened. They wished him Godspeed. All of us except Baba knew. Ma informed him months later. No one pays a call anymore. 3 decades. Number two, tittle tattle halls. The mother waves a goodbye as a school bus sets off. 3. Blame it on the state of mind. Dotted on as daughter, she is the one I lust after. Thriving on the meats, we build littoral abodes for Lord Shiva alongside the sacred Ganga. Number 4. Will this strategy work? I'm writing on menstruation, pregnancy, and motherhood. Menstrual blood is no different from the one the heart pumps. It is red, sticky, and has a peculiar odor to it. That it is considered unholy in tribal setups is unscientific. Goddesses bleed, and so does the gentle sex. Pregnancy and motherhood are inseparable. Childlessness finds therapies and centers endorsing Tagore on display. Amar hiyar মাঝে লুকিয়েছিলে, you hid inside my heart. Baby bumps foster designer labels. In the age of mental parenthood, one may not conceive, deliver, or adopt to be called a mother. I witnessed this from a distance. Does proximity help in faithful depiction? Thank you.
Professor Sunil?
Well, inspired by my two literary friends here who are redefining the very domain of poetry, Kirti and Madhu. In continuation with Kirti's poem, I've also got another poem, Pathologies. It's a long poem, but I would read only one or two paragraphs. Pathologies. A figure lies forlorn on the steel bed, strapped to catheters and tubes and a blinking monitor covered with a blanket. Breathing slowly in the ICU where antiseptic smells and a deathly silence combine and strongly prevail, magnifying the tread on the bare floor or the scratch of a gifted golden fountain pen or the muffled cuffs around. Borderlands of life and mortality ever shifting so arbitrarily. Everything is clinical here in this hospital, measured, cold, and couched in expert speak. Total Greek to the helpless patients, carers, blinking eyes in a dim shrine. There, yet not there, sleeping. Thank you.
In fact, I think it's Blavatsky who wrote that people often look at the material sciences and they say it has to be thoroughly defined clinical. But she read, nowadays people are imaginary and writing a lot of stuff people have learned to write, but poetry has to be very clinical. In a sense, and at a different level, it's very true what she says, because we never had that even in the tradition, ancient societies like India, Egypt, China. So we find, I think it's Asimov who wrote that. I mean, the last in the time, he was the last page was reserved for him, and in which he talked about 4 or 5 parts. He wrote about ancient civilizations, and one thing which he says that poetry was never written. It is always done. He used the word, okay, whether you take Sanskrit or Tamil or Telugu or any old languages there, it is not sung, it is not written. It is always making of poetry. Even the root word, if you go there, and when you make something, one has to be completely well-defined and very clinical. Yeah. So thank you very much, Professor Sunil. Madhu, your next poem.
Thank you so much, Rajmohan sir. Thoroughly enjoying Kirti Das and Sunil sir's poem. And so this poem is called Kitchen Gardener of Poetry because it goes after Jack Gilbert's epigraph. So here it goes. Jack Gilbert says, "It's not a business with me. I'm not a professional of poetry. I'm a farmer of poetry." So here goes the poem. It would be ironic If I was to be a farmer of poetry, I would be a landless laborer and my oxen of words borrowed. Poetry is no property. I inherited the debt from poor rains and bad crops. I came into this transient landscape as a migrant with fear and hope tied to the end of my stick, fearing the self claimed gatekeepers may not agree for nowheres to stay. All that I plow and grow are my paradoxes of philosophies, my way of saying dewy things, gone with the silent, seamless silence of countryside afternoons. If at all I would be a kitchen gardener of poetry.
Mr. Kirti, please unmute yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
So this poem is titled "From Being Late in Calcutta." This particular poem deals with what happens when you report late in office. So the line starts with, "As soon as you mark me late, I'll talk about events that guide me to the records you maintain." I would say crowded buses invite passengers from unscheduled halts. I would emphasize the number of speed breakers on road and their poor performance in preventing accidents. I would tell you trains run late, signals are laggy between stations. I won't forget to mention how a sudden protest makes the train stand still for hours. I would discuss about the day I reported late owing to instantaneous suspension of underground train services as a man killed himself on the railway lane. I would ask you to remember why I came late the other day. If you can recall, I had indigestion despite eating at home. I blamed farmers for sprinkling pesticides on crops. I pointed at my salary that failed to buy organic veggies. And then I would invariably argue about maintenance and population. I would appreciate China, one child policy, and their claim on how the government prevented 400 million births, and how India thrives on the revenues earned from selling nicotine and condoms. I would explore other issues. I promise I would explore other issues the next time I reach late.
the
Thank you.
poem reminds me of one person. He's a South Indian. He got a job in a central government office in Delhi. This fellow cannot understand a word in Hindi. The other fellow is officer, Murli Yadav. I think his name is Murli Yadav. He cannot understand a word in English. So this fellow is always late, and he kept on telling different things, like what you are saying. But one day, then finally, this fellow got fed up. Every day he has to learn. That fellow is not understanding, and he also got fed up. This fellow is always late. This is the before. This is in the era before biometric and all. So that fellow will say, Mr. Gopan, he can't even pronounce his word fully. Say, you'll always say, take the last portion and he says, Mr. Gopan, you are late. Yes, sir, I am late, sir. Mr. Gopan, you are late. Yes, sir, I am late, sir. Mr. Gopan, you are late. Yes, sir, I am late, sir. So like that, this poem reminded me of Mr. Gopan and his Leelas in the office. Okay, sorry. Miss Professor Sunil.
Yes. Lot of humor.
Yeah.
A very common problem, Kirti, faced by this poor college principal, asking for explanation.
Okay, you are relating to yourself now. Yeah.
But I would really appreciate this particular poet's beat where I feel extremely inspired by these two great poets, Kirti and Madhu, and of course our beloved host. Well, now I move on to a different kind of urban landscape, which you might have encountered in metropolitan India. The title is The Curse of Kali, a divided city. I'm explaining that with empathy. The poem goes like this. The dark-skinned girl sat bedecked outside the Kali Mandir, at the edge of the teeming, unplanned suburb, amid the believers going, coming out of the small mandir. At feverish pace, throwing coins grudgingly at the frail black child with large, coal-lined eyes who had somehow survived 3 crude attempts of infanticide and hunger. That was her only constant companion, because her dying, battered grandmother had warned the famished family of 7, do not murder this poor girl child. She is Kali incarnate and can kill you all through her single curse. Thank you very much.
So we will just we have some time left, and we will start with Kirti, because you read Y Gene. Okay, now today is International Men's Day, so why don't you read something related to X gene? Please unmute yourself.
Yeah, this is a common problem with me on Zoom, that I always forget to unmute.
This
It just
seems to be
happens
a
with
phenomenon
everybody.
today. Yeah, we just have been here, all of us. Yeah.
So you asked me to read something on X gene.
Yeah.
Although the poem that I'm going to read now is about the goddess Durga, but if one reads the poem carefully, it talks about it essentially talks about the X gene. The poem is called The Untold Saga. It took 2 hands to kill Mahishasura. Trishula was used to destroy the demon. Autumn accompanies your 10-arm avatar. Like many women, you followed the husband. You emerged from the gods. You had several weapons. The fiend was considered invincible. You won the battle but did not claim the bounty. That you are worshipped in earth gave no relief to gasping Nirbhaya. She was scourged by scoundrels who dug into her body parts. She followed death, thus could not create an epic. Nirbhaya died, sir, and had she been alive, should have created an epic now, by now.
Good. Professor Sunil?
Yes, sir.
Anyway, either you or Madhu. Also, I noticed that today is International Toilets Day. I don't know. We have all international days for every damn thing in the sun. So, if you have anything,
Oh,
Yes. Should I read or should
yeah,
Madhu?
please,
please go
go
ahead.
ahead. Yeah.
Again, a very small one. Street aesthetics, which I find in suburban Mumbai while commuting to work. Chalk circles drawn diligently over broken surfaces by hands anonymous. Geometrical patterns that tend to diminish the harshness of tar, and change the neglected urban spaces into beautiful piece of public art.
The last lines now didn't arrive here.
Yeah, yeah. I think that was a disconnect. Yeah.
It got disconnected.
No, no, no. It's now you are live. So can you please read the poem again?
I see. I think link is slightly unstable here. I read it, the last three lines, and change the neglected urban space into beautiful piece of public art. The
Wow.
Rangolis slum dwellers create here
Yeah.
on the street where I frequently go. So that piece of art on that particular stretch inspired this poem. And they're anonymous, beautiful Rangoli patterns. Thank you very much.
Madhu?
Yeah, you talked about International Toilets Day, but let's say there's nothing on that. But there's, of course, something around eat shit, which is like basically pokor khao is a term in Assam or Arunachal because right now I'm there. Like pokor khao is like eat shit, or actually pokor is ass, so eat ass, something like that. So this is called Love Swear. This poem is just a lightened note of that. Uh, so, Love Swear. The poem is titled Love Swear. My wife says it all begins with sweet words, messages, sharing music, talking about shared likings in very sexy English or sophisticated aap wali Hindi or Urdu, dreaming about sunsets on unmapped beaches, borrowing sandcastles from Neruda, Ghalib, or Baudelaire, wishing they were cool breeze outside each other's window on warm summer nights, escaping into the moonlight with their phones to their hearts and closing their eyes at dawn, secretly yearning to apply utu on each other on mopin. But it's not love until you fight over something stupid and yell, pokkor khao.
Okay. Uh, Lal, I think we have time for one last poem by all of you. So maybe, I don't know, Martin Gardner once wrote, it came out as a book also, series of articles, what he published in Scientific American, so that how, what beauty is nothing but symmetry. There was a specifically about 2 pages or something, why people fall in love with poetry, the alignment of symmetry between thought and expression. So, but then I had another episode with the artists. They say that somebody quoted with the Departed, the movie, and how that I don't know who is that person, is a very famous actor, and he starts with, "Do you know John Lennon?" And you give me anything, I will make anything out of it. So like that, poets can make anything out of anything. So, but he says anybody can make anything out of it, but there has to be a complete symmetry between the thought and expression. It's not merely cogent expression. So then he goes on to say that there are many thoughts in every human being's brain that refuse to get expressed. But poets are the masters of able to even express those thoughts which sit on the boundary and refuse to yield. Yeah. Professor, Mr. Kirti, one last poem.
Yeah. So this poem has a Bengali flavor to it. It is called Masala Muri. Rajmohan sir, you know muri, puffed rice?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the poem is called Masala Muri, and it runs as ginger slices do not titillate my taste buds again. The tangy golden of mustard oil does not tease my nostrils anymore. Onions fail to dew my eyes now. They were never kept in cold water before Baba chopped them while he got his lenses damp. Ma had tears. On every stormy Sunday, we invariably had power cuts, and Baba cooked dinner for us all, a moderate serving of muri mixed with onion, ginger, and blobs of oil. On such occasions, we used to sit close, facing each other. We shared our stories. From airing endless grievances on a barren curriculum, the dialogues on the utility of learning Sanskrit, to refuting Ma's advice on being courteous even to strangers we would meet. Our room shined in kerosene lamps. Load shedding no longer casts its spell. The backups are prompt and steady. We order food. The mobile apps comes handy, but Moody seldom makes it to our monthly grocery. The next monsoon, I wish to buy a new lantern, and I'll light it once in a while to accompany the old snack and fresh stories in our family. Thank you.
I think this is a third or fourth poets meet where somebody, at least one poet, talks about stormy Sundays. I think we should have one separate program for stormy Sundays. I don't know, maybe it's kind of expression in English or anything. So, Madhu.
Uh, so I want to read this. I want to close with this because I spend a lot of time with my being a homemaker. I spend a lot of time with my child, and so he's now 18 months old. But I had written when he had turned. This poem is titled "Future," and I had written this when he had turned a year old. So there's a lot of parenting things going on these days, and we both, me and my wife, can't get my hang around it. So we have let it go, whatever. So future. Sorry, it's a bit longish, but not that long. I'll read it quickly. Future. Our boy is a year old now. He's yet to learn to how to hi-fi, handshake, clap, wave goodbye, respond to strangers, or smile on video calls, unlike some babies his age. I don't want to rush him. He's a baby, not instant coffee. Let them run wild in the labyrinth of childhood. No European articles on cognitive development for babies inspire us, nor do we follow 11 ways to make your baby smart and intelligent. My wife coerced me to join a gentle parenting group on Facebook, but I copped out when someone asked, "What is the best position to hold your baby to sleep?" Instincts are science. Be present, hold on to the freedom of wild parenting. Play is the vital building blocks of bonobo relationships, and they continue to play as adults, unlike us. There's more to learn from bonobo documentaries. The boy feels like an old soul. He comes to Bhimsen Joshi, Ustad Nusrat, and Bob Dylan. He floats like a leaf when Alamgir sings Polli Kobis, Amai Bhashaili re, Amai Dubaili re, Okul Doriyar Buji, Kul Nai re. He is peaceful on long road trips on the banks of a swollen Siang. I don't know the mix of flowers and thorns he may bring to bloom. I'm not much of a pruner or trim myself, having come from perennial wild grass. All I know is after a long day of parental chores, I would like to sit and have a beer with him someday. The age ahead asks for distance, as if there is not enough separation between us now. As a father in times of COVID 19, I don't know what lies on the other side of the river, but let's say we have this non high fiving, non handshaking, self engaged child better prepared for a future in physical distancing. Thank you.
You're close to China, and if you resist bulk China and have more children, I think very soon you will learn intuitively Piaget. No need for any of these courses and all. Professor Sunil?
Now back to nature. The title is A Regal Friend. On a park cable, trembling before the wind that plays havoc with trees and tiles of cottages and hovels, a typical feudal lord, violent, power drunk, indifferent, up there on that throne. Regal, haughty, detached from the ground zero, a visitor from the far-off heavens, a pleasing sight. On this rushed Mumbai early morning, a creature, tiny, vibrant, dressed in a multicolored coat, worn earlier by an agile harlequin, doing acrobats in an Italian court. The feathered guest, lightly sitting on that high perch, a stoic silhouetted against the immensity of a dark gray sky, threatening rain. Thank you.
Thank you. So it has been a wonderful poetry session, and thanks Madhu, thanks Mr. Kirti, thanks Professor Sunil, and thank you very much for accepting our invite and coming and reading our poetry. It has been it was great. Yeah.
Thank you so
So,
much for
yeah.
making
It
me
is
a part
all
of this lovely
ours.
sessions.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And all those viewers from around the world, those who are watching, please continue to watch Sahitya Academy's program.